I think a lot of films position freedom as an endpoint, and we really wanted to say, actually, there's a lot of, things that come after. And, my partner is currently incarcerated. And so we kind of wanted to document that journey, verite style, just kind of bear witness.
Welcome to Bitch Talk. I'm your host, Erin.
And I'm co-host Ange, aka Captain Party.
And for more than 11 years, the show has celebrated underrepresented voices in pop culture and beyond.
But not in the snore kind of way, which is why our listeners and followers have graciously voted us Best of the Bay, Best Podcast on 48 Hills for 3 years in a row. Three-peat, bitches.
If you like what you hear, follow us on Instagram and check out our website, Bitch Talk Podcast, and rate us wherever you listen to podcasts.
We're begging you to judge us. When does that ever happen? Oh, you're not going to say anything?
What'd I say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, on that note, on with the show. Clink.
Hey, Bitch Talkers, we're at South by Southwest 2025. We're bringing you 2 shorts on this episode, Red Sands and Exodus. And as usual, we are joined by our honorary bitch, John Wildman at Films Gone Wild. Enjoy.
Here we are at South by Southwest in Austin, South by Southwest 2025 on Bitch Talk and Films Gone Wild. My name is John Wildman, the editor-in-chief of Films Gone Wild. With me is Angela Tabora and Erin Lim. They are the 2 dynamic women who run Bitch Talk. And on this episode, we got a Texas film. Red Sands is the film. We have with us director Romina Janicio and Sean Madison, who's the cinematographer and producer. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we always start this by having our filmmakers introduce our audience to the film who have not seen it as yet. So, Romina, tell us about Red Sands.
Yeah, so Red Sands is a short documentary film about an off-roading community, a Mexican-American off-roading community in these dunes on the border of El Paso, Texas, and Juarez, Mexico, as they navigate their identity while they face, headlines of danger and potential closures.
So the both of you are filmmakers on this film. I want to talk about all the sand. How did you even film this in these in this climate?
Yeah,
I'll start with Sean.
I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that because there was the first night that we were out at Red Sands. We were just getting blasted with wind, and I actually ended up having to get the camera especially cleaned after we got back. And so, yeah, I mean, that was definitely a challenge, the elements. And I think, the second, third, fourth time we went out, it wasn't as much of an issue, but it really depends on how windy it is. And, so just trying to protect the camera however possible. I mean, people who've shot at the beach know that sand can be like a killer for your equipment. So, that was definitely a logistical challenge.
It was tough.
Well, and for your eyes, did everyone have goggles? Was there a goggle budget for the crew?
Actually, yeah, we went that day, and first day we got goggles. And then after that first day, I remembered I was like, oh my God, I've been coming here for 20 years and I forgot, you need the neck gaiters. The next day you wake up, there's sand in your ears and your eyes and your nose. I mean, it gets everywhere. So, yeah.
It's like you came home from Burning Man.
Literally, yes. And you never know what you're going to get. It's one day was 110 degrees and, you're melting. And then the next night it's 50 degrees and 60 mile per hour winds.
And people making bonfires to stay warm while they're out hanging out with their friends. But definitely it was cleaning sand out of my ear for 2 days.
So speaking of sand, I did want to ask you, Romina, I love how you talk about growing up with immigrant parents and being raised among 3 different cultures, Italian, Mexican, and Texan.
Yeah.
So can you talk about how the desert united all 3 of those cultures for you?
Yeah, absolutely. My parents always have said that when they first immigrated to the U.S., they felt really out of place and sad. And it wasn't until we went to the border in El Paso that they said it was the first time they felt like home since they left home. And going and visiting my family who's still in southern Italy and seeing the overlap that it's we're from the Mediterranean scrub, pretty much. And even like, you know, like the flora and fauna there's like prickly pears that grow wild, prickly pear cactus. And I remember being a kid and, you know, we'd pass prickly pear cactus on the road in El Paso, and my dad would be like, Romina, go get one, you know? And so, yeah, it's funny that this like, it's like this between the landscape of the desert, even though it's completely different because we had like this desert that was also by the sea. But yeah, it's like between that and the warmth of, you know, like Mexican culture and the families that welcomed us and brought us in and kind of had this overlap, just ended up working for us in this way. Yeah.
I want to talk about that, about getting the balance between, you know, the fun footage of, you know, of the stuff out in Red Sands, you know, and you go, well, this is great, you know, and it also could be, you know, a Mountain Dew ad, right? But you know, right, and you know, but you know,
or Fox Racing,
right? So it's exciting to film that stuff, and they're cool shots and amazing. But what really makes the film for me is the heart of what gets to that. And I'd love for you to talk about, you know, because you get, I'm sure, you know, you got this killer footage from Sean of that, but then you also have this interview footage and you have this other stuff. And so then when you're in the editing bay, it's like how you're weighting one versus the other and making sure that, you know, one doesn't overwhelm the other. Talk about that process. Talk about the challenge of doing that.
Yeah. And Sean, feel free to chime in here as well. But yeah, I think that it was, of course, it was like a conversation, and a lot of it was, you know, like not planned at all. We just kind of like developed it as we went along, you know, and kind of at some point made the decision that like there's not going to be any talking heads. We wanted it to feel more like cinematic and more like a film versus like a docu-film versus like just a documentary. And so finding that balance,
and
you know,
and working with the editors,
Yeah.
Andrea Cruz and Dan Roman, and Andrea is a co-writer as well, and I think that Romina and her kind of had a lot of conversations thinking about how to achieve that balance between the two and not just have it be this kind of, you know, roller coaster in the desert, but really think more deeply about this kind of intergenerational connection and the community that Romina grew up in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I just want to add, like, the whole film has, for me, this, like, yin-yang energy, you know? It's, like, it's what people think the desert is, what people think the border is, and then the other side of it, what it actually is. It's, like, it's this dark and this darkness and this lightness. And, like, I feel like that, we wanted to portray that in the film. Like, it really is a ride, you know? You're, like, you're on this, like, adrenaline bumping kind of ride, and then you're kind of, like, taken back to the softness of this space and this identity.
And just to add one more thing, like, I feel like a lot of stories about the border, it ends up focusing on, you know, immigrant, like the migrant crisis, and kind of a lot of heavy themes, which are super important. And I think that, you know, hopefully we'll see more about that with what's happening in the country right now. But I think also it's important to show that there is levity and there can be, you know, lightheartedness as well, to kind of be like a counterweight to all of that.
I want to talk about you're talking about balance and keeping the balance in this film, and so happy that there's a woman directing this, because it could be just the whole culture of men and machismo, because you feel that.
Yeah.
But there's women that are a part of
Yes.
this. Can you talk about highlighting the women in this culture?
Yeah, that was super important to me, as you know, as you noticed. And when I started to make the film, I was literally the first thing I was like, I need Rosie. I didn't know who Rosie was yet, but I was like, I need this from a female perspective, you know, because even me growing up there and being like a passenger, you know, like, but seeing how much it's grown and seeing like these girls, not only is this, you know, a third in a place that has like a third in a place of thirds, but then you have these women that are also coming up in this very masculine scene. And so, yeah, it was very important to me to highlight that perspective. And luckily I found the most badass girl, the most badass woman, Rosie. I'm so excited for everybody to meet her. And yeah, she was this perfect representation of, you know, she's like a single mom of 2 boys, and she was like, my dad taught me the ropes, just like he taught my brothers the ropes. And so I thought, like, why can't I have a truck and do the thing? And, you know, and she's kind of like paved the way for all the other girls that are now coming up.
And the size difference between her and her truck is
she's literally
incredible.
like 4'10". Yeah.
She's probably
I'm like
4'11",
5'2",
and
so yeah.
her truck is like
10 feet.
10 feet high. Yeah,
She's gonna need a ladder as she grows older, and
exactly.
Yeah, it hurt my knees to just think about getting in that car.
Me too. It hurt my knees too.
We were hoping she would pull up to the premiere in that truck, but well, maybe we'll get surprised tonight.
Yeah.
Well, on the topic of, I know we have to wrap, but on the topic of perceptions, I did want to just thank you for seeing the dichotomy of this off-roading, which people think is dangerous, but this is a place where people go to feel safe and to have community. And arguably, they're in more danger just being out on the regular streets.
Exactly.
So I just loved that thought came across from watching this film as our perceived danger versus the reality of our dangers.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm so glad that did come across, because that was kind of a big part of it. You know, like it is so based on perception, you know, like what our ideas of danger are, and what is danger when you grow up in a place like the border, and what is your safe space. And I can attest to, you know, having grown up in that, like even still when I go, you're like surrounded by this adrenaline, but that adrenaline somehow brings you like peace, because you're focused on this like singular thing, and you're also in this incredibly beautiful environment.
Again, the film is Red Sands, which delivers a wonderful introduction to a very specific culture of off-roading, and really it is just a love letter to the people who enjoy that. We've been talking with director Romina Janicio and cinematographer producer Sean Madison. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you to our pink pony bitch, Susie Hayasaka, and our denial is a river bitch, Annie Tabora Gakula, for supporting this episode.
Here we are on Bitch Talk and Films Gone Wild. My name is John Wildman, the editor-in-chief of Films Gone Wild, and I have with us the heads and the leaders of Bitch Talk, Aaron Lim and Angela Tabora. See, I love to like beef you guys up every time that I can, because you deserve that. It's you guys. Bitch Talk is so freaking cool.
Yeah, that's true.
We are at South by Southwest 2025 in Austin. Looking very forward to talking about this short film, a short documentary. We have with us a director, Nimco Shekhaden. Did I say it right?
Shekhaden.
And I made a big deal about wanting to pronounce it right, and I messed it up. And Sarah Chishi, she's the producer of the film. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
We like to start this off by having our filmmakers introduce our audience to the film. So Nimco, tell us about the film.
Yes, thank you guys so much for having us. We're so excited to be here. Exodus is a short film, and it's basically about two women journeying home. And it's kind of asking the question of like, what does life after look like? I think a lot of films position freedom as an endpoint, and we really wanted to say, actually, there's a lot of things that come after. And, my partner is currently incarcerated. And it was all very theoretical, like thinking about what is it going to be like for him? What are the challenges that he's going to have to face, especially the invisible challenges, And so we kind of wanted to document that journey, verite style, just kind of bear witness. And we're incredibly proud of this film.
It's been such a proud journey over the last 2 years, and I think even seeing Nimco kind of step into herself as a director and share deeply personal explore parts of the story that are deeply connected to her own experience. And I think even, our incredible protagonists, Trinity Copeland and Asia Serrano, we've been corresponding with them for over 2 years now. We actually met Trinity when she was still incarcerated at Bedford Correctional Facility, and we'd correspond with her via JPay. So it's been a really beautiful journey for both them and us, kind of just as women on this journey.
I do love all these women at the helm. And this is technically a short film, but it is a big film, and it covers so many big topics and big questions that hopefully the audience is going to walk away asking themselves. But I did want to know how you connected with Trinity and Asia in the first place, and was the timing of both of their releases, was it a surprise and just good timing, or if you can elaborate on that?
So I had been thinking about this story, and I really felt like Black and brown women's stories were often left out. And so I knew that I wanted to make sure to tell stories about women. When I go visit my partner, the visiting rooms are often full, men generally do have a lot of support. Women, when we went to go see Trinity, like no one was in the visiting room. And so, you know, it was kind of like, well, you know, how do we tell this story? I knew that I wanted to focus on two women at different stages of the journey. So Asia was released in 2021. So she had been home for a few years, but of course she never got the proper reunification with her family, with her children. And so, and obviously, of course, the deportation aspect of the story was really unique. Immigrant survivors often are punished twice. And for Trinity, we had connected with her a few months before she was released, and we knew that she got resentenced under the Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act, but there was still a question mark of like the exact day. There was even, we would go up and we thought she was going to be released that day, and she wasn't. So, but it was helpful because we got to just go and visit her, spend time, just talk with her on the phone. And, you know, the excitement was palpable. She had so many ambitions, so many things that she wanted to like accomplish. And we were like excited at the prospect of being able to say, okay, we can document the beginning of what this looks like for her. And of course, Asia was a few years removed, but there was all these question marks, like, is she going to be able to come home? She has the clemency case going on with her, with her lawyer. A lot of interesting dynamics. So, but you know, with Verite, like, there's so much starting and stopping. You don't know when things are going to happen. It was like the big moment of the release, and then Trinity's trying to like find herself and find her footing. She's going back home to a family that was fractured due to the crime. You know, Trinity, you know, killed her father, and so she's, you know, her brother experienced a loss, her mother experienced a loss, and then they also lost her as well to the system. So there were so many things that we knew existed, but it was still in the abstract. And so then the film was kind of like, okay, let's see what this actually looks like. And we filmed for over 2 years. Yeah.
I'm just going to ask the obvious question about shooting in black and white, because it's beautiful and it captures the story in a different way. So can you talk about the choice?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I had my mind made up from the beginning. I kind of felt like I wanted to strip everything away. I also kind of wanted to buck the notion that like they're coming home, and so it's like this happy, joyous thing. I was like, actually no, there's so much that's lost as a result of this, even though they are free. And that's kind of, you know, we kind of tried to denote that in the title, Exodus, this notion of the promised land that you can never really quite arrive at, you know. But yeah, it was really just, there was a lot of conversations. Yeah, a lot of the team members had different opinions. They were like, you know, you're in Panama, like you want to see the color, you want to see, and
that was me.
Tell us more.
Yeah, but you know, and we tried it. I was like, you know, let me not be hard-headed and like, you know, be a collaborator, a proper collaborator. And so we tried it, but then slowly but surely everyone's kind of converted, and they were like, actually no, it feels, I mean, there's certain moments in the film where like our camera is super up close to Trinity and super up close to the kids, and you're here for these very intimate moments that it feels like, I don't know if I should be seeing this, you know, family conversations that are incredibly charged. Asia seeing her kids for the first time since being at Bedford Hills Correctional, and it was like, pay attention to nothing else, you know, like let's just kind of like stay in this moment. And it felt kind of like it just allows you to exist in the core of the story. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
I agree. I think after seeing the like developments with the film, and even our amazing editor Sandrina Zombart, I think the film is so much about relationships and intimacy, and honestly the intimacies that are lost due to time away, physical separation, and also emotional barriers that occur due to being physically separated, that I think seeing, you know, both women in their homes with their children on FaceTime or in person, I think the black and white really emphasized this intimacy that otherwise color wouldn't have accomplished, I think.
I also kind of took it as, sorry, just to chime in, I also took it as like nothing is black and white. Mm-hmm. Their crimes were not black or white. Freedom is not a black or white thing. So like there's just so many layers to it being black and white.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like it's funny because there's so many parallels that came through that we figured out in the edit room. Like originally, I don't know that I envisioned this film being about mothers and daughters. That was something that very much came about. Yeah, and you see these parallels, and you see there's a moment in the film where Trinity is talking to her mother, and that was 17 months after her release, that she was ready to have that conversation with her mom, where it wasn't just kind of existing on the surface. And it's interesting because like you see her and her mom are sitting on the same couch, but they feel so far away from each other. Mm-hmm. And Asia and her
in
children,
different emotional worlds. Mm-hmm. They may be on the same couch, but they're totally emotionally on different planes.
Right. And you have Asia and her children and her mom who are in two totally different countries, but the bond is still there. And it just speaks to her as a mother being able to maintain that closeness with them, even though, her youngest child was born in Rikers Island, it's just devastating. And I think like her story really underscores, she talked a lot about how, she was in an abusive relationship and now she's in another country and completely separated from everyone that she loves, and the punishment sort of never ceases,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Before I start, everybody, this is not a video, so everybody's just listening to this. So if you're listening to this, I have to let you know that the four women who are here have such a strong game with their earrings. It's almost hard to focus because all four have really brought it to the party here. This is great. Now that I've established that for the team, one thing that I really appreciated about the film is that because I've seen so many films about post-incarceration, the process of trying to get free, whatever, and there's a forensic quality to the interviews that you do that isn't always done, where oftentimes we see like the person who's in and them trying to get out, or the lawyer that's trying to get them out, but the fact that you had so many points of views from family members who sometimes are at odds with the situation, interdynamics that are really fraught with peril because of what happened in the past and what has not been rectified, and that's something I had not seen. And I think it gives it such a strength and such an access that if you have not gone through that experience, that you can see things dramatized, but it really gave it just this depth. And I would love for you to talk about if you sought that out. Or sometimes, when we make documentaries, we stumble upon it. We go, oh, shit, here's the movie, right? So talk about, in fact, both of you, please address that.
Yeah. Well, I think firstly, being someone who loves someone on the inside, I knew that perspective was really important because, the support that is needed on an emotional level, on a financial, there's a lot of different fronts. And so I knew that we would have to include those perspectives. And in the beginning, it was kind of more logistical also, like we were working on trying to get access to Trinity on the inside, but we wanted to know, well, what was this experience like for her mother? What was this experience like for her brother? And then the same thing with Asia. She was in Panama working on trying to get funding in documentaries. Not easy. And so, her mother was in Brooklyn. We were working on trying to connect with her kids who were still living with their father, who of course was Asia's ex-partner who, abused her. And so, it was really important, like, let's see what this experience has been like for them.
I think also part of the depth, I think, came from, Nimco and I also being women of color and seeing ourselves in our contributors. I think Trinity is our age. Asia could be our big sister. They come from communities that are very familiar to us. And I think, oftentimes documentary is very voyeuristic and, the subjects that people are capturing are very separate from the documentarians that are capturing them. And I think it kind of does affect the work, but I think unlike that scenario, we were very connected with the women whose stories we were chronicling, and we all listened to the same music, we kind of were. I think they trusted us because they saw themselves in us and we saw ourselves in them, and I think that is an invaluable connection that oftentimes does not occur in filmmaking.
And I would also add, I think I knew I wanted them to feel empowered, that they had a right to participate in the process and that they had a right to shape this aspect of their narrative. I didn't feel like I had complete say-so or I could tell them how their story should be told. And so there was that feedback loop that we wanted to incorporate, making sure, that if there wasn't something that they wanted to touch on, you have a right to say no. If there's something that you feel like we should be spending more time on, then encourage that.
And they did. A lot of the conversations weren't immediate. I think, not to spoil the film, but there were a lot of conversations that did require massive lead up and starting and stopping and kind of making sure you're checking in with both parties to see if they're comfortable and, making sure that we're ready to have this conversation. It did take a lot of emotional sensitivity and trust building. And I think that's why, as Nimco mentioned with Verite filming, it did take quite a bit of time to earn that trust and have that occur very naturally.
Yeah. And Trinity, she had been away from society for 10 years. So she was already thinking about who am I? Who knows me? I've kind of been invisible to everyone. So it was very serendipitous, the timing. She felt like, I want to tell my story. It felt like, it was something that she wanted to participate in. In Asia, she has to be her own self-advocate. She has to tell her story, because otherwise, who's going to come rescue her? She has to be, part of the fight. So she's been raising her voice as an advocate, as a supporter of other women. She's testified in front, she's just an incredible, incredible woman. And so, but I don't know that anyone has ever had that long-term commitment. I mean, she would always express gratitude, because she was like, you guys came all the way to Panama. She was like, people usually would just call if they want to hear a bit about my story or something. I think she appreciated that. And even one of the greatest honors was when she told me that the film was a way for her to see her children, a way for her to see her mother, just in the everyday, in the mundane. And she was like, there was things that they said to you, she was like, that I don't know that they want to burden me with. I don't know that they want to, put that on me. And so she was like, it's opened up conversations. And I was like, that was just such an honor, to hear that.
Well, and again, and just to double down on what I said, and it also for the audience, it really gives a depth of understanding that we don't always get, with, and like I said, I've promoted a few documentaries that fell in that same subject, and I was like going, haven't seen this before. This is great. Again, the film is Exodus. We've been talking to the director, Nimco Shekadin, and the producer, Sarah Chishti. It's been great talking to you both.
Thank you. Thank you guys all so much. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on today's show. You can find more information about this episode in our show notes.
If you're missing us, you can visit us at bitchtalkpodcast.com to sign up for our newsletter and buy us a cup of coffee.
Did you know we're also on the radio? You can find us at bff.fm.
And lastly, rate and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. All the cool bitches are doing it.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcast.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.